we had a lot of storylines leading into the weekend. A few of those being, we had this new short track package that everyone's talking about. There was a lot of anticipation before the race started on what was it going to be like. They talked to, the reporters were all over the drivers in their media availability before the after practice happened on Friday, saying, what's it like? Is it better? Is it worse? And I'd say that the majority said, well, it feels the same as it did, or it felt worse. I came out and said it was maybe just a hair better, I thought. To me, I didn't think that the race didn't change anything for me. I thought that good cars made their way to the front. Now, it took them a long time to do it, for sure. But it's still, it's still difficult because we still have shifting. We still have, only a second or so fall off. So there's a lot of things that play as a factor into it.
Is it frustrating getting asked that question every time you come to these tracks or a short track where it's like, oh, what's the difference? What's the difference? And you're just like, guys, it's the same freaking thing. It hasn't changed.
Yeah, I mean, but it has changed, but we knew that it wasn't going to be a big change. They came and they hauled the teams out there, I think December of last year, after Phoenix, and did this test. A lot of the items that they were going to work on got even nixed off the list. They didn't even work on the shifting. That was one thing they were going to work on, is no shifting. I think that'll be very, very tough to get rid of shifting until you add horsepower, and that's a whole nother subject. But yeah, this is just, the tire is the biggest thing that in my mind changed over the weekend. And I do think that the tire was an improvement. So I guess what I don't understand from the driver's perspective is that how is this worse? Because the tire is clearly better. It was faster on the short run. It fell off to about the same as what we had, maybe a little better in the long run. So that if that's better, we know the simple diffuser that's in the back of the car is not, it's not a huge game changer. So how is this package not better? So I guess from my standpoint, it seemed like I could stay a little bit closer to the cars that were in front of me, just barely. It's not a huge change, but it is just barely. Yeah, I mean, we got a long way to go, no doubt about it. I don't, I guess, understand quite what the fans' problem was with the race itself. I mean, I thought short of the last stage where Seabell kind of got this buffer with cars with old tires, like he went through the pack, right? He started, I'm not sure, let me just say 10th, let's just say, on that final restart.
I think he came out 21st.
Yeah. He drove up from 20th in the 20s.
So what's wrong with that? He drove from 20th to take the lead and win by 5 seconds?
6 seconds.
In 90 laps. Like, he had a good car, so he won. So, and he was able to come from 20th. I restarted 23rd. I could only make it to 11th. Now, I got stuck behind two guys for an extended period of time. But, I mean, that's just kind of...
Is that just a result?
He was better than I was. So.
His car was the best car on the day.
Absolutely. And he was able to go through the pack. I think, the ability for him to run kind of in a different line than others really benefited him for sure. But it seemed like what happened is he had a restart where he really got a chunk of positions, and then he got to those older tire cars quicker than everyone else did, and he just disposed of them really, really quickly. So you got to tip your cap to him and his team for kind of staying in the game. They got to the front at the end of stage 2, had a not so good pit stop, and then it was going to be interesting to see how that race played out once if I didn't cause a wreck, right? It was like, because everyone was short on fuel except maybe the 6 cars that stayed out on that last pit stop because of the previous wreck that had happened. I think the Logano wreck that put everyone close on fuel. So 6 cars pitted. So then they're saying, okay, we're not going to pit anymore. We're good on fuel. They then stay out. The field pits, and it was interesting. It was almost like Atlanta, where I didn't gain positions, but I came out of the pit area right behind the cars I was just racing, Tyler Reddick and all those guys, when I spun out. So it didn't change the world for me, but it certainly.
Well, what happens if that caution doesn't come out?
So if I didn't spin,
yeah,
we would have all had to pit. So there was 23 cars on the lead lap. You had 6 that were good, that were not. They had just pitted 2 laps previous. They were not going to stay out there. They were going to stay out. So that's 17 cars that were going to pit. We were going to restart probably. So the caution doesn't come out. There's 17 cars that has to pit. So we're going to finish, in the back half of the top 10, I guess. Because the 7 cars that pitted the previous restart, they don't need to pit at all. We would have had to pit under green if there were no more, like Martin Truex did.
Right.
So the winner would have been whoever of those 6 cars.
So you're saying you would have been in the same situation regardless. Is what you're...
Not entirely.
Right.
We wouldn't have won if there were no other cautions. If I didn't cause that caution, there would have been 17 of us that needed to pit under the green flag. The 6 cars that pitted right on the edge of that fuel window, those would have been 1 through 6.
Right.
So I don't know who that would have been. That would have been your Bushers, your whoever, yada, yada, yada. I'm not sure who those 6 were. So, I thought, to get back to what we were talking about, the aerodynamic package, listen, I am the last one to stick up for NASCAR on anything. I shoot everyone as straight as I can on this podcast, and I don't play favorites, and I try to call it as I see it, and I am very unbiased. I don't understand the uproar of the race, because I thought that throughout the entire race, certainly the first 2 stages, I was in third and I could see first right in front of me. So it was never really spread out. Now, there was the 3 of us, right? The 20, the 45, and the 11 that were kind of breaking away from the pack a little bit. But I thought, it's not easy, right? I actually saw Derek Krause's interview, I think, after he got in a wreck, and he was like, man, these Cup cars are 10 times harder to pass in than any other thing I've been in. Now, he's been in, trucks and Xfinity, and he's raced in a lot of different things, and so he's not wrong. He's definitely not wrong, and it is difficult, but we have an identity crisis as fans. We need to figure out what we want, right? Do we want all the cars to be, and I guess I'm asking, do we want the cars to be the same as what they are, right? Do we want all the cars to run close to the same speed? There's a bunch of parity, and just whoever's out front is going to win that day. Or if you don't want that and you want more ingenuity, and you say, okay, let the teams play in this areas and that areas, we're going to add more horsepower, go back to where we were 8 years ago, you're going to have blowout wins as well. You're going to have ones where people hit it, the Kevin Harvick days where people, they just go out there and they dominate. Martin Truex days where they just stink up the show. And it just, what I'm saying is it just, but through the pack, there's more passing. Because there's got to be fast cars and slow cars. If there's no slow cars and everyone's fast, passing will be difficult, because then it will be about air, which we've seen, and that's the topic we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks, is that it is about air, because the first place car or the car in front has such a dramatic aerodynamic advantage, being the car that takes the air first, and the second car is at a deficit. The third car is at a bigger deficit, and on and on and on. And not till you catch lap traffic is it like, does it level out the field? But then you're just running around in a roller skating rink, because then we're all getting dirty air and no one's going anywhere. So we have to figure out what we want. Do we want parity? NASCAR seems to want parity, right? They want everything to be the same. The negative to that is that you'll have everyone running the same lap time and no one passing. You've got to have the haves and have-nots if you want actual passing.
Yeah, it sounds like there's just not. It's just not all roses, right? There's going to be pros and cons to whichever
exactly
of that
right.
you prefer.
Yep, 100%. And at some tracks, parity's good, right? Where everyone's the same. That's Atlanta. That's why you see those finishes that you see at Atlanta and maybe some of the other tracks. But on the short tracks, it can cause this type of conveyor belt that we just see, right? And what happens in the negative to parity also, and where you're getting stuck in the dirty air, like we have less side-by-side racing. So then there's less accidents. So there's, we've seen less, I actually thought yesterday there was more wrecks than what we've seen at Phoenix in quite some time. So, and then I think Josh from NASCAR, Josh Hamilton, tweeted out, and NASCAR, I love NASCAR. They'll be the first to do it. When the stats support that it's better, they'll put out those stats. And it was like 2,800 green flag passes. We can argue about the green flag passes stat, but it's been the way that they calculate that has been the same for the last X amount of years. And that number was higher yesterday. So I know that the amount of caution flags has a factor in that as well, because every time we line up 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, one caution can equal 600 more green flag passes.
Right.
Over 2 laps.
And I'm sure the restart at Phoenix helped too.
Yeah, I guess my only thing is that I think the fans fed off of what the driver said a little bit in practice, and they had this thing under a microscope, and they looked at the race and said, "Oh, it's not better. Not better. It looks the same." It's looked the same for a very long time, right? So, I see in our notes here, is this just what Phoenix is? Should we accept it as such? Probably should. I mean, it's just a difficult track to pass on, and so it has been for quite some time. Richmond will be the same. I mean, it will. So we have to just understand that this is kind of what we have now, and let's make the best of it.
Here's that number. 2,813 green flag passes, the highest total of any next-gen race at Phoenix. There was 19 green flag passes for the lead.
How does that relate? The 19 or the green flag or the passes for the lead, you said 13?
19.
Yeah, I mean, I thought there was not utter domination by anyone, right? I mean, there was 3 cars that dominated the first 2 stages, and then you had C-Bell driving from 21st to the lead in the final stage.